Hello, National University Academy students, National University Virtual High School students, and prospective teachers preparing for the California Subject Examination test. Just wanted to review with you some more information from chapters 8 and 9 of your America Past and Present text and prepare you for your discussion boards and quizzes. I was just talking about the Battle of New Orleans and this the situation where, because as peace treaties or peace agreements are being made, it doesn't mean that your commanding officers at the site of the battlefront know that you're coming to a resolution. So we'll see in the Civil War there were some battles that were fought that could have been not only avoided but shouldn't have been fought at all, because peace was already agreed to in the Treaty of Paris. In this case, the Battle of New Orleans should have never happened. A peace treaty was being signed as the troops had landed on the beach there, and Peck foolishly ordered the attack in 1815. The British general, he was outnumbered. Jackson had a better fighting force, and Jackson soundly defeated the British in that fight. It shouldn't have occurred at all, but it did. It prevented the British occupation of a strategic city, New Orleans, where they would have been reluctant to surrender. So it's a good thing that the Battle of New Orleans did fall as it did on the side of Jackson winning the battle. Which of the following changes in the Constitution did New Englanders recommend at the Hartford Convention? The Hartford Convention caused a stir because you had it basically requested a limitation of the president to a single term in office, and this was seen as an attack by moderate. It was actually moderate Federalists. It actually wiped out the Federalist Party, because after the War of 1812, the Federalists were seen as having gone against not only the war, but having gone against Jefferson. And since Jefferson's popularity rose and the Jeffersonian Republicans' popularity rose altogether, the people felt that those who put forward these proposals at the Hartford Convention were traitors, and they were trying to divide the Union. So it created this sectional agreement almost. The War of 1812, if you review this information on page 246, for that information on the Hartford Convention, also on 246. Among the results for the War of 1812, they ask you, there was obviously a victory over the Western Indians, nationwide acclaim for Andrew Jackson after his many victories, rejuvenated American nationalism. This is going to lead into the era of good feeling with James Monroe. And those are the key events that happened there. The Embargo Act was another thing that had upset the New England politicians and moderate Federalists there, who lost popularity at this time. England had invaded during the War of 1812, of course, and one of the ports they went into and took over was New England, and it seemed New Englanders felt that Jackson didn't do enough to keep those ports safe. So there was a lot of resentment in New England against Jefferson. The country as a whole, though, was angry at the Federalists for bringing these topics up. So they lost not only power, their party essentially disintegrated. The law prohibiting the importation of African slaves into the United States was complemented by a similar British law in 1807. See, the British Royal Navy was actually boarding smuggling ships off the coast of Africa and confiscating crew and returning the slaves to Africa, because the slave trade had been the African slave trade to the United States was coming to an end in 1807. So a law passed by Jefferson, but not everyone in the United States, especially those in the South who were a part of this lucrative practice, were on board with this. So they continued to smuggle slaves. While the British felt that they were simply enforcing the laws. So even though some Americans were complaining like, oh, what are the British doing boarding our ships? We have no business. The British would just turn and look at Jefferson and the American law that had been passed in 1807 and say, hey, you guys passed a law, don't get mad at us when we're boarding your ships, just enforcing it. In the decision of Fletcher versus Peck, you want to look at on that last part about the Royal Navy and boarding African ships and the law of 1807 banning slavery or the African slave trade. Look to page 239. The Fletcher versus Peck decision of 1810 in the Supreme Court. That's on page 238. It established a party called the Good Old Republicans, and they were termed in the press as tertium quids, or just the quids. And this tertium quids translates to no accounts, or the nothings. There's a bunch of no account losers, basically. But what the Peck decision upheld was its authority to rule on the constitutionality of state laws. The good old Republicans betrayed the Republican. They were seen as betraying the Republican purity of the founders, or at least were claimed to by the Federalists, and they despised the commercial capitalism that was starting to happen in the United States. Nonetheless, the Fletcher versus Peck decision was upheld by the Supreme Court, and it upheld that its authority to rule on the constitutionality of state laws was intact. Which are the following statements of the Louisiana Purchase is true to this. Now, everything surrounding the Louisiana Purchase it's just an interesting period. I was reading just yesterday some of Neil Ferguson's The Ascent of Money, and he talks about a ship coming to a Spanish ship coming to the Louisiana Territory, and why Spain gave up Louisiana Territory to Napoleon, and of course Napoleon giving it up to the United States for $15 million. Napoleon had said at this point, damn sugar, damn coffee, damn the colonies, I renounce Louisiana. He had been through with it. He'd ran into problems with, obviously because he had lost to our, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name, Horatio Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. He didn't have the shipping vessels, and since cargo vessels were sometimes turned into fighting vessels, he didn't have that active fleet to protect them, so he just said forget it. So strict borders for the purchase were not specified for the Louisiana Purchase. It was one of the things that you want to remember. Strict borders were not set, so it was this kind of this nebulous territory that doubled the size of the U.S. The following actions by Jefferson administration coincided with the Republican belief in the strict interpretation of the Constitution. This, of course, was the repeal of all taxes, including the controversial whiskey tax. Remember that we talked about the Whiskey Rebellion last time, and how the battle between the Federalists and the Republicans, and how Washington and Hamilton, thinking of this national bank idea and taxation and paying down debt, or trying to finance and get rid of the debt through the national bank, also taxing the granaries and the distillers of whiskey to generate federal income or income tax, was not a popular idea with Jeffersonian Republicans. Jefferson cut the size of the military when he gets into office, and he cuts it in half, and he closes the foreign embassies. He is seen as a very frugal leader. He actually retired a majority of the Navy's warships at this time, and said that we don't want them out there causing trouble and getting people upset and causing wars, so we'll just cut back on our Navy ships altogether. They don't really protect us. They're just bumping into people and pissing them off, or upsetting them. So let's just call them back. So he definitely cut back the direct taxes, especially the repeal of the direct taxes, including the controversial whiskey tax. I'm going to pause here and finish up for the next 10 of those, and join me for yet another review session for part 3. Talk to you soon.